Screens calm my highly excitable child, as it goes with the dopamine. He has very restricted screen time and, of course, has severe meltdowns when I refuse more or during daytime when he should really play outside. What management strategies would you suggest? Evelyn, you want to get started?
So it's funny, we just did, and I'm putting out there if you would like to get a little bit more information and suggestions, we did a podcast, several actually, on screen time, and this is a real concern issue.
We also did a webinar.
Yes, a webinar, that's right, and that's what I meant to say, but we also did a webinar and several podcasts on this, and it's a real concern and issue, and something that I think most of us are struggling with, both as adults as well as for our children. And just to explain a little bit, the screens, when we're watching, what happens physiologically to our children, the reason that it has that dopamine effect as well as that quote unquote what we think and perceive as a calming effect is because when our children are engaged in watching a screen, physiologically, while their visual system is on overload because they're trying to interpret what's coming in through their eyes, it actually ends up having a masked sort of effect of shutting down some of the other sensory systems by nature of the fact that they're trying to process so much information so quickly. So what ends up happening is they have the perception of being, we see that they're calm, and you know how parents say, like, I could put my hands in front of their face and they're not going to even respond, and they're good, and I have, like, you know, there's 20-30 minutes of them really being engaged in the screen. But what happens is the minute you shut down the screen, you're sort of waking up all those sensory systems, and they tend to be in a little bit more of a sensory overload because you've taken away the stimulation, and now the rest of the body, so to speak, has to catch up.
I just want to share that she's also sharing that he's almost 8 and diagnosed ADHD last year.
Okay. So we know with that, thank you for sharing that number one, in general, when we have ADHD, neurochemically, there could also be some sort of a disorganization where we may even need more of that dopamine release. We're looking for that effect that helps to organize, because usually if we have ADHD, let's think about the hyperactivity component. What do most children with ADHD need? They need to do something movement-wise, or they're playing with something, or they're walking around. And they're telling us, giving us a message when you have that. And by the way, the diagnosis is important, but by the neurochemical piece. But basically, we're knowing physiologically that they're having more of a need internally to have more movement in order to allow themselves to focus and regulate. And the television or the screen is what helps give that perceived effect. So something that I would recommend is before you actually have him engage in screen time, try to incorporate some movements to prime his system, if you have to use screens for that reason, to prime the system so that he's a little bit more regulated and organized before he sits down at that screen. It's not that he's not going to get that calming effect, it's just that when he's getting into it, his systems are a little bit more organized and they're more integrated. So when that visual system goes into overload, you may not have that much of an effect when he stops the screen. And also I want to put out there that after he stops screen time, you also want to incorporate movement. And the screen should, if you can, only be used, I don't know if your question is that you want to try to limit the amount of time or find other avenues. If you're trying to find other avenues, movement is definitely something that I would incorporate. Or perhaps another idea is when he is engaged in screen time, incorporate using a program or whatever he's watching, movement within that. There are so many programs out there where you're watching something, but you're also maybe dancing with it, or maybe you're doing some exercises, or perhaps you're engaging in, something where he's actually not just sitting there, but moving, because that's going to go a long way towards also incorporating those sensory systems that are shut down. And when he stops screen time, he may not have that much of an effect of that overload.
Yes, I think that that's very important. But I just want to share, like, I'm looking at your question, and it sounds like really one of the biggest issues you're having is that, you're restricting it, right? You're doing what you need to and limiting it, and still at the same time, it's even when you're refusing to give it to him that he's having the meltdown. It's just in the concept of, right? Exactly. So she's saying correct. So what's happening here is that the anticipatory component of that dopamine hit that he's having is creating it. I believe I actually posted, I posted our webinar on there. Because in the webinar, we go down, we give you some resources. And that's what was, as I was listening to Evelyn and I was reading your question, I realized that in the webinar, we go through some resources in determining how to create that dopamine release fix. And what do I mean by that? It's not only through the actual screen time, and we talk about in the webinar also exercises to do before and after, specifically for screen time based on the age. Because remember, 8 years of age is not just the ADHD component and the physiological component. We're talking about pre-hormones. He's pre-puberty. That's when the hormones start kicking into play. So when he's thinking about the screen time, he's already getting the fix of what it means to relax, regulate, and get more organized. So when mommy comes in and says, I'm sorry, sweetie, but we need to play outside. We're not going to do screen time because it's a beautiful day outside. In his mind, he's already anticipating the fix and the release, and it creates a shutdown, a cortisol level, a big release for him. I'm like, yes, he would wake up and talk about what he would play this afternoon. Exactly. You mean on the game, on the screen, right? Is that what you're talking about? Because he's anticipating it already. And now the way to curtail that, and we can't really negotiate with an 8-year-old. Yes, on the screen, exactly. So we can't really curtail an 8-year-old and explain to them the effects of cigarette smoking or eating sugar, right? Like, they don't really care at this point. They just are feeling physiologically right when he wakes up in the morning what that fix is. So, the thing to remember is that we need to address that through movements, like Evelyn was saying, but not just in relationship to the screens, but in relationship to the dopamine fix that he's receiving. So it might mean creating a sensory diet for him, which is another little mini webinar that we have. But if if you're not relating to him having this issue with other areas, Emily, and it's only screen time, you can definitely check out the webinar on screen time. If you're having an overall issue, which by the way you might be, because you mentioned that he has a diagnosis of ADHD, so you might be having regulatory issues all the time, you may want to create a sensory diet that's in place every single day. Because what happens is when you give the movement throughout the day, it creates the shift of what's happening with the circadian rhythms, with the dopamine cycles. So when he's waking up in the morning and he's ready to go, it's because he's in that loop response. So what we want to do is try, and there she goes. He's highly sensitive in all aspects. Okay. So what's the other thing she mentioned? Would you suggest a complete stop fasting from screens a month? So 2 questions here. First of all, so again, sensory diet wise, highly sensitive wise, yes, 100% you would benefit from doing that because you're going to address all those areas. And by the way, we entitled this talk Parenting Highly Sensitive Children. My sister and I have been requested to do a particular course only addressing management and compensation techniques and real life ways of managing this. We're going to be doing, God willing, a course on this. It's going to be a 5-week course. It's going to be live online. And if you're interested, I believe Joffrey shared the waitlist link for that. Definitely sign up for it so you're in the loop. But in the meanwhile, when it comes to screen time, fasting from screens from a month will 100% disconnect that dopamine need for him. So 100% if you can manage it. But here's the thing to remember. He's 8 going on to 18. And what do I mean by that? A child like this, if he's having those high sensitivities overall, if he's having that need, that anticipatory response of wanting it, he may find some other things in life needing it. And at some point, he is going to be in front of a screen. We are raising children in a screen-heavy world. So you want to make sure to address those underlying issues. If there's anything you know about us, if you follow us at all, is we're always about getting to the root of these issues. So sometimes we only see the issues when they are bedwetting or when they are having a high issue with screen time. But sometimes they become subtle and they interfere with productivity, with relationship creation, intimacy, being able to function in a full way. So you want to address why is he having that anticipatory response even from waking up in the morning. There's some kind of physiological need. Evelyn gave some great advice, and the webinar on screen time should help you with practical applications on even how to do the fasting from screens in a very coordinated way. We have lots of suggestions that we put in there. Like if you do want to get, our whole component is to remove screens gradually, right? Like we don't want to talk about just letting that dopamine release go full out. We give some suggestions how to do that. That's fine. But what was coming through to me from your question is addressing the whole picture, because if he's having the resistance even before he has it, there's some other physiological